They're known to be rugged, well-built, and have one of the most dedicated followings of the owners group of all the followers of all the cruising boats. They only planned to make 50 boats a year to begin with, but the first model was so successful that they had to open a second factory.
This week on Everything You Need to Know, we're going to be talking about Westerly.
Westerly was founded by a man called Dennis Rayner, but not until after he already had some success building boats. In the 1950s, a company that made camping trailers, or caravans, because this was in Europe, got a hold of Rayner and asked him to make them a small plywood dinghy that they can include as a package deal when they sold their campers. Rayner agreed, and he founded the Beacon Boat Company, and not only built the dinghy, but he also started building a 20-foot sloop called the West Coaster. It was a custom order originally for a customer who wanted to sail the Bristol Channel, but the custom boat worked so well that he ended up making about 60 of them. For 1961, Rayner made a new design, which he called the Corvette, which was his first design without hard chines. He was making a lot of sailboats, but they were hard chine boats, almost like a power boat, and he was making them all out of plywood at this point, so a rounded non-hard chine hull was a little bit more difficult to make when you're working with wood. So production costs were very high, and they only ended up making 2 of those boats. And Rayner, seeing the problem, started to train his eye on a new technology that had just started to come out called fiberglass. Around 1963, Rayner was approached by a rich dude called Hillary. It's a dude called Hillary. His last name was Scott. Scott, wanted to build a new boat with this new fiberglass technology, and Rayner agreed to help him, and they built a 22-footer that they called the Westerly 22. The Westerly company was born from this arrangement and from the Westerly 22 that they were going to build, and Rayner came on as the managing director of the Westerly company. And as they were founding the new company, a new standard in boat building was published, and if you met this standard, your boat would receive, each boat would receive a certificate from the surveyor, sort of setting your boats a cut above the competition. So Westerly aimed right out of the gate to get this certificate for every boat they built, which led them to have production facilities that were clean and modern, as opposed to the old dingy boatyards that people were using at that point. A much more professional and organized approach to boat building, just made for better boats anyway. Lady K Sailing and Everything You Need to Know are brought to you by patrons. These are people who give a couple of bucks an episode to keep this channel improving and help me sort of outfit Lady K for her next adventure. She does need some work. Big shout out to this week's newest patrons, Annabelle and Philip. Welcome to the team. So Westerly is up and running now with some employees, and they're building the Westerly 22, which they started to debut and show at the Earl's Court Boat Show. And they had planned on having, some success at least, and they figured they'd probably build about 50 boats a year. But it was so successful at the boat show, 50 was not going to cut it. So they had to open a whole second factory on the land that they had, and they were starting to turn out 150 boats per year. Sadly, the company was around for just a few successful years when Rayner unfortunately died in 1967, and a man called David Sanders took over managing the company. From the start, Westerly was also trying to export boats all over the world, because if you want to be a successful sailboat maker in Europe, it helps to get into other markets. So they were really looking at the United States and a lot of other places. They were producing some 15 boats, different models, and they had some 700 employees. They even produced a J boat. They produced the J24 for a while under license. In the 1980s, however, the world was changing, and between exchange rates and the value of the dollar and the pound and everything like that, the cost to export boats was getting higher and higher, and it made it to the point where it just wasn't worth it anymore, and more than half of Westerly's business was from exports, and they had to stop exporting. So the company fell on harder times. The company changed hands a few times, and it was managed by a lot of different people as it slowly dwindled. Now, through this time, the company was still making a lot of boats, like the Griffin, which was later remodeled to be the Spirit. They were making the Merlin, the Tempest, the Storm, and the Typhoon. So they did have some pretty cool names for their boats. Most of the boats were rolled into what was called the Regatta range, all those names. And some new designs came around from the Ocean Range, the 33 and the 43, which are probably the ones you've actually heard of. And finally, after 15 years of hiatus from exporting boats, they were finally back at the Annapolis Boat Show in 1997. Westerly again bounced between different owners, and by April 2000 found themselves in trouble again financially, but this time no one was around that was interested in buying the company to save them, so they had to close their doors. They laid off all their employees and they sold a lot of their assets. One of the biggest buyers was Hunter, weirdly enough. The molds for all the different boats sold to all kinds of different people from all over the world. But all was not lost just yet. Some Slovenian designers bought the molds for the Westerly GK33, which is a variant of the Ocean 33, and pushed again into some new technology with the Westerly name. They started using vacuum-infused epoxy carbon fiber to build the GK33. I guess a few were built, but it never really took off. But at least Westerly was still sort of alive, albeit in a very small way. The Westerly 33 that I mentioned is likely the one that you've seen around. They built some 240 of the center cockpits. And they also built an aft cockpit version, but it was called the Westerly Discus. In its formative years, though, Westerly was known to be very, very well built. And because the certificate that they were getting for their boats, it was actually rated to be in a Force 8 blow offshore for an extended period of time. A lot of these things have crossed the Atlantic. A lot of these things can be found all over the world. We're talking about a company that put a lot of effort into quality and seaworthiness, and it really shows when you go into the owners' forums. People speak very highly of these boats, and they truly have been around the world. I want to take a second to update you guys on where Lady K stands right now. She's in the water, the steering is sort of sorted out. I've had her out a few times, and she's doing well. The AC power wasn't working at the beginning of the year, got that fixed. The water wasn't working, got that fixed. The nav lights weren't working, got those fixed. And it's just been a slew of boat work. That's why this video's late. And that's why I haven't really had any episodes featuring Lady K in them, because I've just been upside down in a locker fixing things for like 3 weeks. So hopefully next week's episode we'll get the camera out to the boat and go for a sail, and I'll kind of give you guys a rundown on where the boat stands and what the future plans are, and what Lady K's next step is. So I love you guys. Please hit the subscribe button if you like the channel, and I will see you in a few days for the next episode. Bye.